Well, former U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara successfully prosecuted several high-profile cases during his time with the Southern District of New York. The list includes Osama bin Laden's son-in-law, the attempted Times Square bomber Faisal Shahzad, and the notorious Russian arms dealer Viktor Bout. Bharara was fired by President Trump after he refused to resign as U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. His new book is called Doing Justice, a prosecutor's thoughts on crime, punishment, and the rule of law. It draws on his decades of legal experience to shed light on how the country's justice system works. Good morning, Preet. Great to have you at the table.
Nice to be here.
So as we wait for the Mueller report, which may or may not come this week, there are a lot of people already tempering expectations of what we can expect out of it and say the greater legal threat to the president comes from the Southern District of New York. Yeah. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm. I think so, yes. I'm still reeling from the story about the sextuplets.
Yeah.
In 9 minutes, yeah.
In 9 minutes. I've never been that productive in my life. But the Southern District is very productive. You know, the difference between the Southern District of New York and the Special Counsel's Office is the Special Counsel's Office mission was circumscribed by what Rod Rosenstein, the acting Attorney General at the time for purposes of this case, said they could look at, which included Russian collusion and things that arose from that investigation, whereas the Southern District folks that I write about a lot in the book, given my experience there for 7.5 years, they're not circumscribed by anything. They can look at crime as they see fit. They can bring a case against anyone they think that justice, the interests of justice serve. They don't care how powerful you are. They don't care what party you're from. They don't care where your assets are. They're tough and aggressive and independent.
And so no matter what happens with the special counsel investigation, the Southern District of New York, which you were formerly the U.S. Attorney of, currently has at least 4 investigations open that we know about. Campaign conspiracy in the Trump Organization, inauguration funding, Trump super PAC funding, and foreign lobbying. Is that a lot on one sort of person in their organization?
Yeah, I mean, they can handle it. They can chew gum and walk at the same time. I mean, look, they do hundreds of investigations. And there are lots and lots of talented people there, some of the best people that I've ever met. And one of the things that I'm pleased about in the book is letting people know about some of the folks who are not famous, who you don't see on television, whose names you might not know, but are the unsung heroes in keeping New York safe and keeping the country safe.
Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the things you write about in the book, too, is that investigations are hard.
Yeah. They are.
Yeah, it's not just connect the dots and follow the money. Explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, you can apparently, not to keep going back to this, you can have sextuplets in 9 minutes. You can't, you can't do an investigation that quickly. You never know where an investigation might lead. You know, one of the things that I think it's important to remember is when you begin an when you begin an investigation, you have to keep an open mind. You can't have a thesis in advance. And sometimes you go down a path and you think you're going to find criminality, and it turns out not to be so. And sometimes you're going to go down a path, you think it's a long shot, and you end up being able to prove a case. So, you know, I think in this age of Trump, when people jump to conclusions and people chant lock her up and lock him up, it's good to take a step back and to think about what justice means, how it's done, how it's thwarted, what fair-mindedness means, what due process is. Those lessons have been a little bit lost, I think, in the last couple of years.
Yeah, you point out we need to get back to that. You also talk about in the book, I was fascinated by this, that prosecutors are often fascinated and repulsed by mob activity. We've got a really interesting story in the news right now where the apparent boss of the Gambino family was assassinated outside his home, and everybody thought that it was a mob hit. So when you look at that case, what are you thinking? And talk about being fascinated and repulsed by mob activity.
Yeah, you know, we were talking before the show, Gayle, about you have to be interested in the subject matter. Yeah. And lots of, you know, my favorite movies are mob movies.
Are they?
And I wanted to be a mob prosecutor, and I was when I was a line assistant. I thought when that assassination happened, like everyone else, your first thought is it must be a mob war.
Yes.
When the reputed head of the Gambino crime family is shot to death outside of his home. But then, as I also point in the book repeatedly, over and over again, things are not always what they seem. And sometimes you think that a person committed the crime, and that's where, you know, all the leads point, and that's what common sense tells you. That can get you in a lot of trouble. There can be miscarriages of justice, and it looks like, and again, we should remain with an open mind, that maybe it had something to do with a love interest and had nothing to do with mob warfare.
You say ask a lot of questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question.
Is that a question?
I happen to think that's true. I was surprised to hear you say it, though.
No, it's very true. It's true. I think it's true if you're a new person in a job, like our rookie assistant U.S. attorneys, that I used to say to them, a suppressed question in a case is worse than a suppressed piece of evidence. Because the only way you can get true knowledge about the subject matter and make sure that you understand what you're saying when you get information from someone else is to ask questions, not just smart questions, but basic questions.
You also
Listen
talk
on this, though, yeah. Sorry, since we're just running out of time. Why are you skeptical that the Mueller investigation is coming to an end?
Yeah, it may be coming to an end, but I keep seeing conflicting pieces of evidence. It's sort of like the things are not what they seem. We jump to conclusions too quickly. So on the one hand, Andrew Weissman, who's the top deputy, is leaving. There are lots of people who are reporting, who I presume have decent sources and are very smart, who say it's winding down. But then on the other hand, you have Rick Gates, whose sentencing has been postponed yet again.
For the fifth time.
For the fifth time, in a letter submitted on Friday, which said that he's continuing to cooperate in not one, but several investigations. That makes it seem like the work of the special counsel is not done.
All right, Preet Bharara, thank you so much, a.k.a. drama queen. According to your 10-year-old daughter. You'll have to find
read the book.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that part.
And you'll learn about his son and his Rubik's Cube.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think only
Whole
your
family's in the
daughter
book.
can tell
See,
you.
we set the book up pretty well, don't we?
I
We've done
appreciate
justice
it.
to the
Hold it
book.
up, hold it up higher.
Done justice to the book. There you go.
Doing Justice, it goes on sale tomorrow, wherever you like to buy your books.